So Sutta Goswami begins the chapter 4. He begins to answer how Vyasadeva divides the Vedas, because as soon as he comes to know that one day he sits on the banks of the Saraswati and meditates. So in his meditation, by his mystic power, he sees how is the future going to be. He sees the anomalies in Kali Yuga, how people will be having decreased bodily strength. They'll be faithless on about God, and impatient due to lack of goodness, because of passion and ignorance overpowered them, and also dull-witted and reduced lifespan and overall unlucky. So in this way, he sees the qualities of the people in Kali Yuga, so he feels compassion. So he thinks, how I can present this Vedic knowledge, because they will have low memory. So how can I make sure this Vedic knowledge will be propagated to them? So he divides the Vedas into four, basically simplifies the whole body of knowledge divides them into four, and then he gives supplementary to help understand those Vedas as the fifth Vedas, Puranas, and then he teaches them to particular disciples. Like he teaches Rig Veda to Paila Rishi, he teaches the Samaveda to Jaimini, and Yajur to Vaishampayana, and Atharva Veda to Angira Muni, and Puranas to Romaharshan, Sutta Goswami's father, Romaharshanji. So he divides and teaches to all of them, and then they teach their disciples. So in this way, the parampara continues. So the knowledge is propagated through speaking, guru from disciple. And in this way, he edited the Vedas due to his compassion for conditioned souls in Kali Yuga. So it's an enormous task. So he does this and then teaches and makes sure it is propagated so that the people of Kali Yuga can have the advantage of Vedic knowledge. After finishing all this work, he was feeling dissatisfaction. And then he was dissatisfied and he was contemplating what is the reason, because he was saying, I have done such a huge work. I have underwent all the disciplinary vows. I have unpretentiously presented this work and worshipped the Lord, Guru, and performed sacrifices, and abided by all the rules, and then wrote various Vedic literatures, including Mahabharata. So I have done my best. I have done all my best efforts. Still, why is this dissatisfaction? So he was contemplating what is the reason for this dissatisfaction, and then he thinks possibly the reason is I have not enoughly pointed about the devotional service to Supreme Lord. He says, Kimva Bhagavata Dharma Prayena Narupita Priya Paramahamsanam Tayeva Hi Achyuta Priya. So maybe the devotional service which is dear to the Lord and his devotees, I probably didn't fully elaborate on that. I spent more time in explaining the Vedic rituals and other things, but I forgot to mention, or in the sense I neglected to mention more about devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So when he is thinking like that, when he is contemplating possibly this is the reason, then his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni, visits him. So Srila Narada Muni actually arrives on the banks of the Saraswati. So seeing Narada Muni arrive, Vyasadeva welcomes him and worships him. So this is the fourth chapter, basically. Vyasadev's Sutta Goswami is being asked the three questions about Srimad Bhagavatam's history, Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. So Sutta Goswami begins to speak about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. He begins how Vyasadeva has a vision about Kali Yuga, and out of compassion he divides Vedas, presents the Vedas. Still he feels dissatisfied. So when he is contemplating, his spiritual master Narada Muni arrives at the scene. So now Narada Muni is going to speak to Vyasadeva. So specifically he is going to instruct Vyasadeva about what is the reason for his dissatisfaction. So this is chapter 5. So before we go into chapter 5, does anyone have any questions? Want to ask something? Am I audible?
Yes, bro.
Okay. So we'll go into chapter 5. So chapter 5 has 33 verses, and we can divide them into 4 sections. In the first section, Narada Muni is being asked questions by Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is basically confused. So as soon as the spiritual master comes, he asks different questions about why he is feeling this dissatisfaction. And then Narada Muni diagnoses the problem of Vyasadeva and then suggests some remedies. In the course of suggesting the remedies, he speaks about his past life and advises Vyasadeva to correct his course of action. So these are the four sections we will see. So Narada Muni Narada Muni is being, as soon as he comes, he first inquires Vyasadeva. Oh, you feel despondent, so what is the reason? So the Narada Muni first asks, in a sarcastic way, he asks, are you satisfied identifying body and mind to be the self? So he's giving a hint. What is the possible reason for his despondency? But at the same time, he also says, okay, we may think, oh, he didn't have enough knowledge. He identified body and mind with the self. That is lack of knowledge. That is why he's feeling this despondency. No, so Vyasadeva says, no, your knowledge was complete. Your inquiries about and the studies were complete. You even wrote this great literature, Mahabharata. So there was no problem with your knowledge. So then we may think maybe he didn't realize the knowledge that he wrote. No, he says, no, your Brahman realized. So you realized all that knowledge that you wrote. So then he says, you have all the knowledge, you have all the realization of that knowledge. Then why should you be despondent? Why are you still despondent? So Vyasadeva states, yes, that's exactly what my question is too. Actually, I have done my best. Why is it that I am feeling despondent? Please tell me. So he says, you know the reason, the root cause of my dissatisfaction. You know the reason for my dissatisfaction, despondency. You please explain. You are a great soul. You are like sun, super soul. You are like the air. You pervade all places. You know my heart, what is happening there. You please explain what is the deficiency in my attempts to serve everyone that is causing me this despondency. So Vyasadeva humbly submits to Narada Muni, and then Narada Muni begins to explain. He says the first reason is insufficient glorification of the Supreme Lord in the Vedic literatures that already Vyasadeva wrote. He says you overemphasized the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, and forgot to, or in the sense neglected to mention more about the Supreme Lord, directly glorifying his pastimes, his activities, and the power of devotional service and how to perform devotional service. That you didn't actually focus more. Instead, you focus more on Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. That is why you are feeling dissatisfied. So he says, Bhakti is the only valuable asset for conditioned souls. And without describing them, you have described various other things. He says those literatures which does not describe the glories of devotional service or the Supreme Lord, they are like pilgrimage places for crows. Saintly persons don't go there. He says, yeah, instead, even if it is the devotional literature, even if it is compiled with some mistakes, still it is glorified by great personalities because it can create change in the heart, transformation in the heart. And that's why he says, Bhakti is the only valuable asset. So the knowledge of self-realization does not look great, is not great if it is devoid of bhakti. Just realizing self is not a great thing, but one should understand who is the Supreme Lord, what is that one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. So he says, you have the qualifications as a transcendental author, so please describe things in connection with the Supreme Lord. Don't describe things disconnected from the Supreme Lord because they are insubstantial in satisfying the soul. So, and then he says, Bhakti is the most important thing. Why? In compared to other yogas or other paths, the progress made in Bhakti is credited forever. It is not lost in the next birth. Even if it is one does not fulfill in this life fully, it is going to carry over. So in that sense, Bhakti's credits are forever. So it is better to describe more about Bhakti, encourage people in performing devotional service. He says that is why describe the Lord's pastimes more vividly, because by hearing that, conditioned soul's heart will be purified. So he says the results of bhakti is permanent. He quotes this famous verse, Navai Jano Jatu Katan Sunavraji, Mukunda Sev Anyavad Anga Shamshatin, Smaran Mukundangri Kavuhanam Pugar, Vihatu Nichena Rasagrahojana. Even if a person practices bhakti and falls down, still it is no loss. Because vihatmichin rasagrahojana, he won't be able to give up that nectar of Krishna's pastimes once he has tasted it. So it will come back to him somehow or other. So in that way, he encourages and instructs Narada Muni to describe the Lord's pastimes more vividly. And then he concludes, this is glorifying the qualities of the Supreme Lord is considered the purpose of everything. One's austerity, Vedic study, sacrifice, it is considered the goal of everything, purpose of everything by great people. So please do that. So that's what he concludes. And to glorify the bhakti and its causes, he actually begins to hint about his previous birth, just to glorify what is the how great bhakti, the process of devotion services, and the cause of that bhakti, which is the mercy of devotees, how great it is. To narrate that, to illustrate that, he actually speaks shortly about his previous life. That is the connection from this section to the next section. Just to glorify bhakti and its causes, he narrates his previous life. So far until the 22nd verse, we saw Vyasadeva questioned Narada Muni for reason, and then Narada Muni gave out the reasons and then instructed him to present devotional service more directly. And for to glorify the position of bhakti, he actually provides a small account of his previous life from verses 23 to until the end of the chapter, and even a little bit in the next chapter. So he says he was in his previous life was a son of a maid servant. His mother was a widow and he was the only son, and she was a maid servant. So once during the 4 months of rainy season, Chaturmasya, the Bhakti Vedantis, they were traveling and they came to this place where he and his mother were staying, and then they stayed nearby, in whose service his mother was engaging in. So because his mother was engaging in their service, he was also engaging in their service. So he engaged in the service of the Bhakti Vedantas. And by their mercy, he developed good qualities and faith. He became very obedient. He started hearing whatever they were discussing about Krishna. So, and when he was thus engaged in their service and bhajan, by their permission, they give him some remnants of their food, and then he eats. After they finish the meal, they give the remnants to him. So he eats those remnants by their mercy. And by that, he becomes sinless, and he develops more taste for hearing and chanting. He already developed some good qualities by their mercy, by doing service to them. And now by eating their remnants, he develops more purification and taste for hearing and chanting. So in this way, he honors those remnants and develops good more taste for hearing and chanting. By his attentive hearing Krishna Katha, he develops gradually Ruchi, Asakti, and then he comes to the stage of Bhava. And from there, he continues to hear them and then develops Prema. And the sages, this brings to the end of the Chaturmasya, the 4 months comes to an end around this time. So they depart, and while departing, the sages, seeing his advanced qualification, they give him confidential mantras to chant, and then they depart. So he says, in this way, I actually attained advancement in devotional service just by the association of these great sages, and by their mercy I developed bhakti, and because of the process of devotional service I quickly quickly achieved the stage of love of God. So that is why I tell you yesterday, please dedicate your activities for Lord's satisfaction, and encourage everyone to dedicate their activities for Lord's satisfaction by serving the devotees and the Lord. In this way, one engages in the service of the Lord and his devotees. They can naturally remember his names and qualities, and this is my personal experience. I have personally experienced this. So please, you explain Krishna bestowed knowledge and his service upon me for my devotional service. So in this way, by continuing to perform devotional service, I came to this stage of becoming your spiritual master. So this is the power of bhakti. So please describe the glories of uh, the Supreme Lord and the devotional service. There is no other way for elevating people's consciousness. Other things will not transform their consciousness. So present about the Supreme Lord and his devotional service. In this way he describes, and he concludes his instruction. So this brings us to the close of 5th chapter, where we saw how Vyasadeva asked questions to Narada Muni, and Narada Muni pointed out the reasons for his despondency as insufficient glorification of the Lord and overemphasize of the Purusharthas. And then he quotes how bhakti is the most good for a person. Yeah, so here I have some questions. What was the mantra given to sages by Narada Muni? Narada Muni doesn't reveal the mantra because Vedic mantras are considered secret, but he also teaches it to Vyasadeva. And yes, as a small young boy, he reaches Prema Bhakti. True. Yeah, any other question? Yeah, as a small young boy, he at a young age he developed prema because bhakti is not dependent on the age or anything. If the process is followed properly, and if it is by Krishna's grace, anyone can become devotee at any age. Prahlad Maharaj was also a small boy. Dhruv Maharaj was a small boy. Here Narada Muni was also a small boy.
Why Narad had to take rebirth again, like if he attend the
Yeah, that we will see. That's what will be the question of Vyasadeva. We are in his footsteps. So that's what Vyasadeva will ask in the next chapter. Actually, we will see that. So this comes. So he just explained in short. He didn't want to speak more about himself. So he just spoke until the point that he became a devotee by their mercy, and then he didn't tell any other details. How he became Narada Muni, and all those details he doesn't say. So Vyasadeva, being his disciple, is very curious. This is the first time he is personally hearing the history of Narada Muni from his own spiritual master. So you can, as a disciple, we can understand his excitement. So he, now that he heard about that, he asked more questions. So that's what we will see in this chapter 6. It is conversation between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. In the first 4 verses, Vyasadeva asks about Narada Muni's previous life, what he didn't say. So he's going to ask more details about that. And then Narada Muni will explain about his life, meditation, and vision of the Lord, and how he became Narada Muni actually from being a small boy. And then Narada Muni concludes, again re-emphasizes the instructions that he gave to Vyasadeva in the previous chapter, and then departs after answering all the questions of Vyasadeva. He departs from Samyakrash. So let's see what are they discussing. What is the conversation between Vyasadeva and Narada Muni? How is it continuing? So Vyasadeva asks quite a few questions. He asked, he's so excited. He asked, what did you do after their departure? Like, what did you do that you became such a great soul, like that a great personality like you are now? How did you pass your life after initiation? That they gave you the mantra. So what did you do after that, so that I can understand and do that? And how did you attain this body? The same question as now was asked by Sakyan Prabhu. Like, how did, if he was a small boy, how did he become the Narada Muni in a spiritual body? And he mainly asked another question. No one remembers their previous life so clearly. So this happened in the previous day of Brahma. So how do you remember that? Something which happened in the previous day of Brahma in a different body. How do you remember your previous life so vividly? So he answers these questions now, Narada Muni. So is it? I think is it clear until now? So these questions will be answered in this chapter. From 5 to 10, Narada Muni is going to describe his continuation of his life history. What happened after the sages left? So after the sages left, after the Chaturmasya, just leaving Narada Muni with his mother, he was so much bound by the affection of his mother. As he has already developed prema, he understands what is Maya, what is Krishna consciousness. But he understands that I am her only son, so he remains indeed bonded by his mother's affection. He remains with her. But as fate has it, by the power of destiny, his mother is bit by a snake when she goes for milking cow one night, and then she dies, leaving this boy behind, a young 5-year-old boy behind. She dies. Now, Narada Muni takes it as a special mercy of the Supreme Lord that he finally removed that one attachment in his life, that also he removed. So he considers it as a special mercy and then travels north. So in the Indian culture, traveling north means spiritual pursuit, because north is symbolized is the direction where Himalayas is there. So people would actually, when they want to renounce family or renounce life and then become focused on spiritual life, they used to travel north in the past. So that's why It said he travels north. That means he made spiritual life as the priority and he left his town. And then he traveled through various villages, forests, townships, all kinds of places, not attracted by them, just continues to travel north. He travels through all kinds of places and finally arrives at a particular spot. He's very tired, so he drinks water in the river and then settles down nearby a tree. And then he starts meditating. He actually meditates uh, as per the instructions given by the sages. So as soon as he starts meditating, he sees that the vision of the Lord is there manifest in his heart. So as soon as he meditates, he could see uh, the Lord's appearance in his heart. I have a question this morning. No, Narada Muni's mother was no special person, at least nothing mentioned about in the Srimad Bhagavatam. She was a normal woman, servant maid, had him as her son. That's all. There's nothing other special. She was not an incarnation of anyone. Nothing mentioned at least in Srimad Bhagavatam, and I don't think so. She was just a normal woman. And after he meditates, vision of the Supreme Lord appears in his heart. So he becomes completely ecstatic, seeing the Supreme Lord in his heart. Tears completely fill his eyes. And at one point, he couldn't see himself or the Lord. He completely becomes, the vision of the Lord gets lost. So he loses the form of the Lord. And then he becomes very dissatisfied. Oh, what happened? That the vision I had of the Supreme Lord suddenly disappeared. So he again attempts. He again attempts to meditate and bring the form of the Lord. But as it is, as we all know, the vision of the Lord cannot be brought about by any mechanical process. It is by Lord Krishna's grace. So seeing so many attempts of Narada Muni to again see him, so the Supreme Lord speaks to him. He doesn't appear to him at this second time. He just speaks to him. He says, I already showed once to you to increase your desire to achieve me fully. Since you have more to accomplish spiritually, in this lifetime you won't see me again. So you continue practicing devotional service and you will come to me in your next life. So he says this and then he disappears. So basically it is said, you have already showed me once, so why don't you again show me? He says, basically, I want you to intensify your desire. Vishnu Chakravarti writes, it's since Narada Muni has already achieved the stage of prema, he didn't have any material desire in his heart, but just that Lord wanted to condense his devotion, his prema. He wanted to intensify his devotional service, eagerness to be with the Lord. That is why he did this. So he says the time factor cannot destroy devotional service. So your memory of this whole thing, your memory of being a boy and then meeting the Bhakti Vedantas and coming to coming to devotional service, everything you will remember. Your memory will continue even in the after the next creation or annihilation. So in this way, he benedicts. That is why he remembers. He answers the question of Vyasadeva. How did he remember his previous life? Because Lord specifically gives him this benediction that he will remember his previous life even when he becomes spiritually a spiritual personality. And then the Lord stops speaking. So now that Narada Muni is totally overwhelmed, but he understands that this is the instruction of the Lord, that he is not going to appear again in this life. So he continues to follow the instructions of the Supreme Lord until his death. Yeah, there is this famous verse, Namani Anantasya Hatat Prapapatan, Guhyani Badrani, Kritani Chasmaran, Gam Paryatan, Tushtamana Gataspruha, Kalam Pratikshan, Vimado Vimatsara. He was chanting the holy names of the Lord wherever he was going. He was traveling and chanting. Kalam Pratikshan, just waiting for the time when he can get out of this body and again be with the Lord. So he was just Kalam Pratikshan. He was just waiting for the time. Vimado Vimatsaran, as a mad, like a mad person, he was just going on chanting and hearing about the Supreme Lord and traveling everywhere, not caring for anything, just waiting for the time to come. So at the time of death, he gives up his body, and then after quitting this body, he receives a spiritual body as an associate of the Supreme Lord, and then Vyasadeva might have asked Vishwanath Thakur, if you have an eternal body, then why did you again take birth as Brahma's son? Because I know you as Brahma's son now, Narada Muni. How did you get this birth? So he says, actually, after the previous kalpa ended, I went back to the body of the Mahavishnu and I was created. And in the next creation, I appeared as a son of Brahma. And then by Vishnu's grace, now I have the spiritual body as a son of Brahma. And I can travel unrestrictedly anywhere in the spiritual or the material worlds. May that by the grace of the Supreme Lord, I was made the liberated spaceman, where I can travel, spiritual spaceman, where I can travel anywhere that I desire, propagating the glories of the Supreme Lord. So in this way, I'm just going on uh, constantly traveling and singing Harikatha and playing my veena and glorifying the Supreme Lord. And he says, now as soon as I chant, I can immediately see the Supreme Lord manifested in my heart. So in this way, he uh, explains the various answers to various questions of Vyasadeva. What did he do after the sages left? What did he do after initiation? And how did he become this spiritual personality like Narad Muni? And how does he remember his previous life? So all these questions he answered. Now Narad Muni is going to conclude. Yeah, someone has a question or something?
Yeah, probably. So he said, the next kalpa, right? Previous kalpa and next kalpa, he took birth
Yeah.
as Brahma's
Yeah.
son.
Yes.
So like next kalpa in the sense, like I mean the Brahma that
Actually,
time.
Brahmaji sleeps during his night time. There is a annihilation. So again, there is a creation. So that's what he is referring as kalpa.
Okay, so
At the
that
end
means
of
before kalpa, Brahmaji did not have any sons. And then the next kalpa he
oh,
had.
in the previous he might have had some sons, but Narada Muni was not his son in the previous kalpa. So after he died, at the end of the kalpa, he went along with. Clearly, Narada Muni says at the end of the previous kalpa, when the Lord breathed in at the time of universal devastation, I entered his body along with Brahma. He goes along with Brahma to Mahavishnu's body, and when Mahavishnu again breathes for the next creation, he actually manifests. So this time when he was manifested, he comes out as Narada Muni, as the son of Brahmaji. Am I clear?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So in the previous, he was not son of Brahma, so that's why he had to wait. But when the next creation begins, he manifests as son of Brahma, one of the 10 rishis that Brahmaji manifests, and he is considered one of the primary sons of Brahma. But he doesn't agree to propagate, and then remains renunciant and travels and glorifies the Supreme Lord. So now, after recounting all this history of his previous birth and his present spiritual body, Narada Muni concludes. Actually, what is this? Narada Muni concludes the instructions to Vyasadeva. He says, I have a question. In his previous life, Narada Muni leave his body as a young boy and he was a devotee of Vishnu. But when Narada Muni comes again, is he a devotee of Krishna? It's a detail, Vishnu and Krishna. So it's like on a spiritual level, it doesn't matter. And Krishna, he is also devotee of Vishnu, and he is also a devotee of Krishna. So I don't think there is a big controversy or any difference in that. He was meditating on the super soul, but by the mercy of the sages, the mantra he had was Krishna mantra. So he is a devotee of Krishna also. And being Narad Muni, he understands who is the supreme person. So he engages in the devotional service to Krishna. I'm not sure if it answers your question. So, and then he concludes the instructions to Narad Muni that Harikatha is the most suitable boat to cross this material ocean, and service to Mukunda is higher than any other paths like Ashtanga Yoga or Karma Yoga. So, in that way, he says, please emphasize more about devotional service instead of so many other things. So, and then he departs from this place, playing his veena and singing the glories of the Lord. So, this brings us to the end of chapter 6. So, anyone has any questions? So what is the time? Okay, we have another 10 minutes. We can we can at least start the 7th chapter and come to finish the logical conclusion of this section. If anyone has any questions at this point, else I can just continue.
One kalpa is duration of Brahma, Prabhu.
Actually, one day of Brahma is called a kalpa.
Oh, okay.
1000 yuga cycles is called a kalpa. So his day and night is equal. He lives for 100 years, during which almost like 1000 yuga cycles happen. At the end of his 100 years, he goes back, and his night is also so much. And here specifically, this is not mentioning, this particular thing is not mentioning about Brahma's lifetime. There is also an annihilation which happens in Brahma's day and night. Between after his day also there is an annihilation, and there is an annihilation at the end of his life also. So this particular, when you say kalpa is one day of Brahma, 1000 yuga cycles. So it is just the end of his day, and then they merge in Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and then the universe is again manifested. So this is partial dissolution, not the final dissolution. I hope I'm clear. So we continue to the chapter 7, the son of Drona punished. So now in this chapter, before this actual topic of son of Drona punished, we have some more details about Srimad Bhagavatam. So after finishing that, we will speak about Ashwatthama. So this particular chapter has 4 sections. We will just see the first 2 sections now. If we can finish this today also is fine, because it brings us logically to the conclusion of answering Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva's vision and glories of this Srimad Bhagavatam, and he teaches Srimad Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami. After that, we will see the other sections. So now that Shaunaka Rishi, he asks questions. So now again the conversation goes back to the sages and the Shaunaka Rishi. So Shaunaka Rishi asks Sutta Goswami, okay, after Narada Muni left, what did Vyasadeva do? Because we know that Narada Muni instructed him to change. So what did he do after Narada Muni departed? So Vyasadeva actually what he did was, on the banks of Saraswati at Samyaprash, a place called Samyaprash, he sits on meditation. Now that he has a instruction, so he meditates on the Supreme Lord to fulfill that instruction. So the Supreme Lord gives him a vision where he sees the Supreme Lord Krishna, and he also sees the Maya, the external energy of the Supreme Lord. So and then he sees the suffering of the conditioned souls also. So why Maya? So why is it that he is seeing Maya? Because Vyasadeva could see that by the influence of the external energy, how people are suffering. So suffering of the conditioned souls invokes compassion in his heart. And then he also now thinks, oh, how do I give solution to the suffering? Because if he doesn't see the suffering, he may think, oh, there is karma, jnana, all these other paths, so they can take to that and they may find some remedy. But actually seeing their misery, he feels, no, I have to completely deliver them. I have to give a perfect answer to their suffering, which can just dissolve all their suffering or mitigate all their suffering. So for that, now he realizes, oh, now I have to present the devotion service to the Supreme Lord. Karma or jnana is not enough to mitigate the suffering. So that's why this vision of Maya and the suffering of the conditioned souls is also given to him, so that he realizes the seriousness of the situation. So he develops compassion, and then he wants to give solution to the suffering of the conditioned souls. So now he presents Bhakti Yoga, which is the solution. So he says, Anarthopasam Sakshat Bhakti Yoga Madhokshade Loka Sajanato Vidvam Shakre Sarpada Samhitam. By seeing the Loka Sajanato Vidvam, seeing the suffering and the ignorance of the people, he made Shakre Sarpada Samhitam. He wrote this Sarpada Samhita, Srimad Bhagavatam, for propagating Bhakti Yodam Adokshade, for propagating the devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And then the glory of Bhagavatam, he says, Yasyam Vaishurya Manayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsam Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. So hearing about Krishna, once Shoka, Moha and Bhaya, all these will be destroyed. That is the immediate suffering, immediate benefit of hearing about Krishna. In the long term, Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsam, devotional service to Krishna will be manifested in their heart. And this is why he understands hearing about Krishna as the solution to this, because it can bring about long-term and short-term benefits. of dispelling their misery short term and giving bhakti in the long term. So that's why he now sets out to write Srimad Bhagavatam. So he edits Srimad Bhagavatam and then includes the glories of the Supreme Lord more. And then he teaches it to Shukadeva Goswami. So Shaunaka Rishi says, why to Shukadeva Goswami? Because Shukadeva Goswami was already a liberated soul. He was like completely indifferent to everything material. So he was totally liberated. Why did he bother to teach him? He says, no. Sutta Goswami says, even liberated souls are attracted by Srimad Bhagavatam. That is how Srimad Bhagavatam is great. They're not attracted to anything material, but even their hearts are attracted by Srimad Bhagavatam because it is completely spiritual. So he says, Atma Ramasya, this famous verse, which is spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami and also by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. Atmaramascha munayo nirgrantahi api viruprame kurvanti ahaytukim bhakti ittam bhuta gunohariti. So he quotes this verse, he states this verse to quote the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, how even liberated souls are attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he says, Sutta Goswami replies this question that sages asked in the chapter 4. He finishes the whole thing, the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, he completes with this verse by glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam. So he spoke about why did Vyasadeva wrote this, where did he write, what are the circumstances that he led to writing Srimad Bhagavatam. He quoted that whole history, that he wrote it on the inspiration given by Narada Muni, and he wrote all the Vedas. He was dissatisfied, so Narada Muni suggested to write. So he edited Srimad Bhagavatam, included the devotional service, and spoke it to Shukadeva Goswami. So when he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, he wanted to know who is to be taught this, so that this can be propagated. He chose Shukadeva Goswami, and then Shukadeva Goswami speaks it to Parikshit Maharaj, and henceforth this Bhagavatam is spoken for everyone's welfare. So this concludes the section of history of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now from the 12th verse of this chapter, Sutta Goswami will answer the next question about Parikshit Maharaj, because the sages also asked about Parikshit Maharaj. So he is going to answer about Parikshit Maharaj from the 7th chapter and almost like 16, 17, 18 chapter, all the chapter through 19, Parikshit Maharaj will be present. Even though in the last two chapters specifically about Shukadeva Goswami, he will be present all through the canto now. Specifically until the 12th chapter of first canto, from this verse 12, now we are going to see until the 12th chapter, the whole 5 chapters is dedicated to events leading up to his birth, because the sages also asked, please explain about the birth of Parikshit Maharaj, his activities and his renunciation. So his activities will come, he becoming a king will come from 13, 14, 15, 16, and then what he did in 16, 17, and then 18, 19 will be about his meeting with Shukadeva Goswami. So these events leading up to his birth is discussed from the chapter 7, 12th verse till chapter 12 specifically, how he takes birth. That is what is all these so many, why suddenly Mahabharata comes is because events leading up to his birth. So in the Mahabharata war at the last day, everybody is dead, Duryodhana is lying, he's almost going to die. So Ashwatthama, to please him, after the whole fight is over, in the night goes and then mistakenly kills the 5 sons of Draupadi, brings them to Duryodhana. So Duryodhana also finds out this is not Pandavas, this is their sons. So he feels bad. He says this is not right. He doesn't feel, and then he dies. And in the next day they realize, afterwards they realize that the 5 sons of Draupadi are killed now by Ashwatthama. So Draupadi comes to know, and then she's crying. She's totally pitiful. She's so distressed by seeing, especially their heads are cut. So in a very gruesome way they are murdered. So Arjuna understands, and then he says, whoever did this, I will behead that person's head. So Arjuna takes a vow, and then Arjuna actually takes a vow and then goes to capture Ashwatthama. So that's where this whole scene begins. So lamentation of the for the dead sons of Pandavas. That's where the section of 1.7.12 verse begins. So in short, the events leading up to birth is Ashwatthama, because he was punished by Arjuna, he gets irritated and tries to kill Parikshit, and Krishna saves Parikshit, and then he is born. In short, this is discussed in 5 chapters, we will see. So in chapter 7, Ashwatthama is punished by Arjuna for killing his 5 sons. So enraged, Ashwatthama takes revenge by releasing Brahmastra again to kill the sons to the last surviving heir of Pandavas, which is Parikshit Maharaj in the womb of his mother Uttara. Because he was insulted by Arjuna for killing his 5 sons, he takes revenge by releasing Brahmastra to kill Parikshit Maharaj. So this is the background story for chapter 7 and 8. So we will see now the last two sections that we didn't see in the chapter 7. 12th to 34th verse, Ashwatthama's act of killing the sons of Draupadi and Arjuna arresting him, and then Ashwatthama being punished by Arjuna. That's what is the last section, 35 to 58th verse. We will finish it in quickly in a few minutes, or we can see this next week. Can I just finish this in like 5-10 minutes? Or we want to end the session?
You can finish, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So Ashwatthama kills the sleeping sons of Draupadi, as I said. So Arjuna vows to kill Ashwatthama, bring his head. So with Arjuna, Krishna as the charioteer, Arjuna sets to follow Ashwatthama. So Ashwatthama flees in a chariot and then figures out he cannot compete with Krishna and Arjuna. So he leaves the chariot, runs, and then Ashwatthama chases him. So once Ashwatthama understood now that Arjuna is going to capture him and kill him, Ashwatthama releases Brahmastra. So the problem was Brahmastra, he only knows how to release it, he doesn't know how to retract it. Dronacharya doesn't teach him that because he is not qualified. So, but he, without knowing how to take it back, he just releases it. So now, because the Brahmastra is released, the glaring light of Brahmastra just covers all over the place. So Arjuna is bewildered. What happened? Why the whole place is now covered with light? So he prays to Arjuna. No, sorry, he prays to Krishna. Arjuna now prays to Krishna that I don't understand what's happening. Please help me. So then Krishna explains the cause of this problem. He says it is the act of Ashwatthama. He released Brahmastra out of fear. So only another Brahmastra can counteract this. So you release your Brahmastra to counteract it. So Arjuna then releases his Brahmastra to counteract that Brahmastra and then takes it back. So in this way that Brahmastra is counteracted. And now that Ashwatthama understands that the Brahmastra is counteracted, so he gets arrested by Arjuna. So Krishna says, now kill him. You said Draupadi, you will bring his head, right? So kill him. But Arjuna understands, no, he is a Brahman, I cannot kill him. So he tells Krishna, let me think what to do. So he just takes Ashwatthama in the presence of Draupadi. He just binds him with ropes like an animal and then takes it to the place where Draupadi and the other Pandavas are there. So Draupadi, initially she was very distraught, but seeing that situation of Ashwatthama, her heart changes. He says, I am already suffering by losing my sons. I don't want Drauni, son of mother of Ashwatthama, also experience the same, because Dronacharya is dead already. So Kripi is Kripacharya's sister is Dronacharya's wife, Ashwatthama's mother. Kripi is already, she lost her husband, she is lamenting, I don't want her to lose her son also. Then she won't have anyone to support her. So Draupadi says, he is a Brahman, he is the son of your spiritual teacher of archery, Guru, son of your Guru, he is a Brahman, and he's the only son of his mother. So considering all these things, I don't want him to kill. I don't want him to be killed. So just release him. Anyway, he has done whatever he has to do, and then my sons are gone. So I don't want to get into this problem of killing a Brahman. But Bhima is like totally angry. He says, no, he has to be killed. So Krishna says, you have already taken a vow to kill. No, but Draupadi now says, don't kill. Bhima still says, kill. So you have to decide what to do. So what Arjuna does was, Arjuna just punishes him in a way a Brahmana can be punished. A Brahmana, Brahma Bandhu especially, because he is not a qualified Brahman, he is a Brahman Bandhu. He is just a son of a Brahman, he doesn't have the qualifications of a Brahman. So if at all they do any mistake, they can be, as per the Varnashram Dharma, their hair can be cut to disrespect them, they can be deprived of their wealth, and they can be driven out of their residence, they can be made homeless. So in this way they can be punished instead of killing them. So Arjuna punishes by cutting his hair and the jewel that he has in his head, and he already lost his Brahmanical effulgence because he killed the sons in a very unbefitting way. So he has already lost all his spiritual strength, and then now Arjuna disrespects him. And then in this way, they release him. After disrespecting, they release Ashwatthama. Now Pandavas and Draupadi, they are though distraught. They're overcome. They're overwhelmed with grief, and then they perform the rituals for all the dead relatives along with their sons. So that's where the chapter ends. Now that they punished Ashwatthama and then actually insulted Ashwatthama by that kind of a punishment. So Ashwatthama is totally mad. He wants to take revenge at the Pandavas, revenge of the Pandavas. So what he does is the next chapter, chapter 8, we will see the next week. After now being punished, what does Ashwatthama do to the Pandavas? That's what we will see in the next week. Maybe we will try to see 3 to 4 chapters next week. That's the plan. So we saw the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we also saw the Parikshit Maharaj's birth, events leading up to his birth briefly. So we will see the section 3 next week, some part of the section 3 next week. And then thank you all very much. All praise to Srila Prabhupada. So if you have any questions, you can ask at this point, or if you want to lead the conversation, you can. So thank you all very much for joining. I'm very grateful to you. I have some questions sent to me. Let me see. To check, Arjuna punishes Ashwatthama by simply cutting off his hair and the jewel that he had a divine jewel on his head. So he severs that jewel also and then cuts his hair, and then in this way they just punish him, insult him, and send. It's a punishment for a Brahmin to be cut like that, being taken away his main jewel, which was very a prestigious thing for him, and also his hair. So in this way he was disrespected. For a Brahmana, even a disrespect is as good as death. So that's why they just that's why the Varnashram Dharma was just disrespect them. Even that is as good as death, instead of just killing him. So he will come back though in the next week. We can see what he does because of that incident. Any other questions? Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. So if you guys don't have question, you can start leaving the meeting, so I'll know I can just stop this.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.